From the conflicts with Napoleon, Nazi Germany, and now the war with Ukraine, it appears that November consistently brings the Russian army crucial strategic wins. One could argue that if November signifies the peak travel and shopping season in Western countries, it concurrently marks the time when Russia reaps strategic victories on the battlefield. The year 2025 is proving no exception, as the eastern front of the conflict demonstrates the diminishing hope for Kyiv. Simultaneously, a 28-point plan, seemingly designed to undercut every future interest of Ukraine, has been executed by the US and Russia, merely awaiting Kyiv's signature. We again witness Mr. Zelensky hastily boarding planes, pleading across various capitals. Everywhere he goes, he alludes to yet another meeting with Mr. Trump. Indeed, the days of comfortably spending aid money from the Democratic Party are long gone. Nowadays, Zelensky is perceived merely as a stray dog, scrambling after Mr. Trump for scraps. Let us proceed with an analysis. After 5 years of intense warfare, the script for this visibly unbalanced confrontation between Russia and Ukraine is nearing its final conclusion. Mr. Putin has fully succeeded in his gamble to prevent his neighboring nation from becoming a staging ground directed at the great Russian motherland. Meanwhile, Zelensky, who was arrogant and theatrical in the early years of the conflict, now has visibly darker and heavier eye bags. The re-emergence of Mr. Donald Trump on Capitol Hill only accelerates and streamlines this inevitable process. Already possessing a good relationship with the Kremlin and his counterpart, Mr. Putin, Donald Trump also harbors an extreme aversion to the Democratic Party's wasteful spending of aid money. Compounded by his allergy to Zelensky's performative posturing, this has rendered Ukraine's 2025 practically a year of scrapping by on meager sustenance. Upon reviewing the 28-point peace plan, with its myriad embedded stipulations that effectively shatter all of Zelensky's pre-war expectations, one truly grasps how utterly disillusioned our comedian-turned-leader has become. It is true that he and Ukraine may still join the EU. However, with NATO access now unequivocally barred, what substantive benefit remains? Even more agonizing is the strong likelihood that a string of strategically and resource-rich eastern territories will genuinely fall under Russian control. If Crimea's fate is likely sealed, major industrial and oil hubs like Donetsk and Luhansk also face being completely lost to Russia. The day we might see the Shakhtar Donetsk football club competing in the Champions League under the Russian flag may not be too far off. Consequently, Zelensky is seen rushing across Europe to meet with European leaders, begging them to extend mercy and help his country. Regrettably, Europe no longer carries significant weight in this matter. A look at the aforementioned 28-point plan clearly indicates the involvement of only 3 parties: the US, Russia, and Ukraine. Europe is notably absent. The implied message to European leaders is, you must fend for yourselves against those 2 ogres. We are out of options. In this predicament, Mr. Zelensky can no longer truly play the role of a president as before. He is compelled to swallow the intense bitterness, resentment, and profound humiliation, donning the persona of a scrambling, supplicating dog. He must beg the Trump administration for concessions regarding the 28 fiercely aggressive clauses that Russia and the US demand Kyiv send, lest things deteriorate further. From a highly anticipated leader, he is gradually becoming a man trapped between Putin and the West, between national aspirations and the stark reality of the battlefield, and between his ambition to revitalize Ukraine and the truth that his country is excessively reliant on foreign support for its very survival. Crucially, he staked the entire future of his nation on a one-sided gamble with the US Democratic Party. Now, with Donald Trump back in power, Zelensky is forced to scramble from a position of weakness, lacking the leverage to demand or negotiate anything. Zelensky's first and most critical mistake lay in misjudging the fundamental nature of the war with Russia. During his 2019 campaign, Zelensky believed he could leverage the power of difference to break the stalemate with Moscow. He entered the campaign with the mindset that by simply restoring peace, he would instantly become Ukraine's great reformer. However, Zelensky failed to understand that his opponent was not a normal government. He was not facing the effeminate Macron, but rather Mr. Putin, a man entirely devoid of any motivation for reconciliation. The choice was simple: either concede peacefully or face a beating. Russia has long pursued a strategy of re-establishing its influence in post-Soviet Eastern Europe, with Ukraine as the most vital component. In other words, regardless of whether Zelensky was conciliatory or tough, moderate or aggressive, Russia was prepared to advance toward war when conditions were ripe. Zelensky erred by thinking he could engage Putin with emotion, personal belief, or a low-budget diplomatic performance. Putin did not assess Zelensky as a partner, but rather as an obstacle that could be removed at any time. Zelensky's second mistake was placing too much trust in the West, particularly the US, without first building a sufficient foundation of self-reliance. Zelensky came to power during a phase when Ukraine was already seeking closer integration with NATO and the EU. He continued this trajectory, but went further than his predecessor by strongly emphasizing that Kyiv deserved swift NATO membership. This directly struck at Russia's greatest fear: NATO expansion right up to its border. While not the sole cause of the war, this was a critical catalyst that prompted Russia to accelerate its military plan. Zelensky had the right to dream, but he did not grasp that such a move would only be strategically sound if Ukraine possessed a strong national defense, a robust economy, and a stable alliance system. The reality is that Ukraine between 2019 and 2022 met none of these three conditions. This leads to the third strategic blunder: almost total dependence on a single political faction within the United States. Zelensky was mistaken in assuming that the US was a unified bloc supporting Ukraine, regardless of party affiliation. American politics consistently operates under a model of polarization. Under Mr. Biden's administration, Zelensky received enormous aid. American media lauded him as a symbol of the spirit of freedom. Biden transformed Zelensky into a poster child for the Democratic Alliance, using it to affirm to the world that the US remained the guarantor of the international liberal order. Observing such massive and easy support, Zelensky convinced himself that he was genuinely brilliant and capable, a beloved favorite of the Statue of Liberty. And so, he forgot that Trump was historically not fond of Ukraine, and especially not fond of Zelensky himself. The most dangerous oversight was Zelensky's failure to prepare any contingency plan for Trump's return to power. Zelensky even permitted Ukrainian media to mock Trump, portraying him as soft on Putin and dismissive of Ukraine.
This was an extremely fatal error.
In international politics, nothing is worse than insulting or belittling another country's leader, particularly when that person could potentially become the US president. Donald Trump's personality is crystal clear. He never forgets those who humiliate him and never passes up an opportunity to settle the score. Zelensky either ignored this or assumed Biden would win a second term, making Trump irrelevant. However, with Trump's victory in the election and his entry into the White House in 2025, Ukraine's entire foreign policy strategy collapsed. Objectively, Zelensky stands before Donald Trump in a position of complete weakness. Trump does not believe in unconditional aid. He questions every dollar sent to Ukraine. Trump consistently frames the Russia-Ukraine war as a European internal matter and has stated outright that he is unwilling to defend a nation which, in his view, has not yet proven its strategic value to the US. This is a direct punch to Zelensky's core argument that the war in Ukraine is a fight for global democracy. To Trump, it is merely a border conflict that can be paused with a ceasefire, or even by allowing Russia to retain the occupied territory. Trump's transactional deal-making mindset directly conflicts with Zelensky's fight to the death, performative mentality. If foreign policy was poor, domestic policy is no better. Zelensky has nowhere left to hide his face. He failed to create the necessary political stability to withstand a protracted war. Corruption scandals within the military and government during wartime eroded support in the West, especially among populist Republicans who were already suspicious of American funds being burned in a corrupt country. Zelensky dismissed a series of officials, even firing the Minister of Defense. Yet these actions only made his government's image appear unstable and inconsistent. All of this provided Trump with further justification to restrict aid. And one must not forget Clause 25 in the peace proposal, the demand for an election in Ukraine. 100 days after signing the agreement, this spells disaster. Stepping down now would be total ruin. It is certain that the moment Zelensky steps down, opposition parties will move to impeach him, and his wife's assets will be scrutinized down to the last detail until a crime is found. Therefore, Zelensky must, by all means, resolve two tasks. First, find a more favorable agreement. and second, secure the support of major powers for a safe political landing. However, Zelensky now holds absolutely no bargaining chips. There's no economic power, no military strength, no political leverage, and insufficient international pressure from Europe. He has only one choice. He must run after Trump like a dog to beg for aid, humble himself to maintain the relationship, and accept that Ukraine's negotiating power has plummeted from being an equal coalition partner to that of a mere aid recipient. Zelensky understands this, and Trump understands this. In politics, the one who fully understands the opponent's weakness is the one who wields true power. Today, Zelensky still maintains a tough public tone. However, every diplomatic gesture proves that he has fallen into a state of complete passivity. From continuously flying to Washington, London, and Brussels to lobby, to having to change his media messaging to align with the new administration's priorities, everything indicates that he no longer possesses the ability to self-determine. A leader once heralded by the world must now beg for every aid package. And every small commitment from a Donald Trump who is always ready to use Ukraine as a tool to demonstrate his own power. The hardship here is not simply the need to ask for help. Every nation relies on allies. The issue is that Zelensky is forced to beg in a condition where he has absolutely nothing to bargain with, apart from his willingness to make concessions and submit entirely, like a hungry puppy. When a small nation becomes completely dependent on a superpower's aid, their capacity for self-determination virtually vanishes. Every decision hinges on the question, will Mr. Trump agree? Donald Trump is the natural enemy of weakness, and Zelensky is now the very embodiment of that weakness. Trump does not believe in flowery rhetoric or the narrative of defending democracy. He believes in profit and trade-offs. This is what makes Zelensky's predicament even more agonizing. With Biden, Zelensky only needed to prove that Ukraine was a stronghold defending freedom from Russia. With Trump, Zelensky must prove that Ukraine is worth the money the US spends. Facing a pragmatic and cold Trump, Zelensky is compelled to change his role from a leader who could speak loudly, make large demands, and boast greatly. He must now transition to the style of a modest, yielding leader, ready to make a deal, to put it plainly, the obedient dog. However humiliating, he has no other choice. A country pressed into a corner cannot afford to stand tall and deliver grand pronouncements. When its people lack electricity, clothes, and even food, autonomy is nothing more than a pipe dream.